When schools finished the academic year earlier this summer, they looked forward to the fall with the first cautious optimism anyone had felt in a long time. But today's guest has offered level headed wisdom that the pandemic simply is not over. He's Dr. Ashish Jha this week on Story in the Public Square. Hello and welcome to A Story in the Public Square, where storytelling meets public affairs. I'm Jim Ludes from the Pell Center at Salve Regina University.
And I'm G. Wayne Miller with the Providence Journal.
Each week, we talk about big issues with great guests, authors, journalists, scholars, and more to make sense of the stories that shape public life in the United States today. To help us this week, we're joined by Dr. Ashish Jha, a calm voice of public health knowledge and reason throughout this pandemic. He's the Dean of the Brown University School of Public Health. Ashish, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me here.
You know, we taped an episode with you in September of 2020, and I was looking through my notes about that last night, and we had at that point lost just over 200,000 Americans to the pandemic, which seemed like an astronomical number at the time. 12 months later, I believe the number is approaching 640,000 Americans have perished. Where are we in the course of this pandemic?
Yeah. So right now, we're actually in a bit of a difficult spot in this pandemic, and in some ways not where I thought we would be. If we were talking a couple of months ago, let's say we were talking in early or mid-June, I would have said we were in for a really good summer. And that infection numbers were falling. I expected them to continue to fall all through the summer. And I expected the deaths to sort of peter out and just get to maybe a few a day, 100 a day at the most. That's not what has happened. What has happened, of course, is two major things. One is we have the Delta variant, way more contagious than anything we've seen. And then the part that really surprised me is that we hit a wall on vaccinations, that after a year of horrendousness, we had these fabulous vaccines. I thought everybody would rush out and get it. A lot of people did, but about a third of Americans didn't. And that combination means we're in a horrible surge, more than 100,000 infections a day. Right now, more than 500 deaths a day. But that number is going to go up a lot. And I just think we are in for a pretty tough couple of months. I don't know. We can talk more about the future, but we're in a pretty tough spot in the United States. And this Delta variant is really wreaking havoc across the world. So it's not just we're in a tough spot here. Much of the world is struggling with this.
You know, so I work at a university. You work at a university. We ended the last school year sort of hopeful in May and June that we would be getting back to normal. And then when the president told us we could all take our masks off, it was sort of this, jubilant moment full of jubilation. Did that guidance to take our masks off come too soon?
A lot of people in public health think it did. I'm in maybe the minority that thinks it didn't. I thought it was a reasonable decision by the CDC to ask people or not to ask people, but just tell people that if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to be masking. That was what the best science at that time was, that vaccinated people do not need to be masked up. And I always say to public health folks who say, oh, they shouldn't have said anything, is what would you have preferred? Should they have not been honest? Should they not have been open? Should they have not shared that science? I think CDC had to do what they did. I get the frustration people feel about that change in policy, but I think it made sense at the time. But it's also a reminder that in a pandemic, when the virus changes, we have to change along with it. We have to change our policy. If we don't make the changes, we're going to get caught flat-footed. So the virus has really changed over the last couple of months, and the CDC's new recommendations have changed along with it.
So with these new and alarming numbers, it seems that there is now beginning to be an uptick in people willing to be vaccinated. And these were people who had the option before and decided not to for various reasons. Is that in fact what is happening? We're seeing more and more people, and what is motivating people now to get vaccinated, months and months after Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J were available?